No pueden vencerme. Soy el pueblo. Target acquired. Launching final salvo.
Okay, I'm going to explain here about macadamia nuts and their effects on the immune system. So basically what macadamia nuts do is that they cause Tregs or Tregs to lose their artificial advantage. So meaning that macadamia nuts are good to shift away from an M2 phenotype, which is what tumors survive on. And Tregs are pretty much what supports the M2 phenotype, because the Tregs, they steal IL-2 away from T cells, causing the immune system to be weak and no T cells to be able to fight against the cancer cells. Effector T cells, they end up regaining dominance, but when antigen is present, so when antigen presentation cells are able to train the T cells, or else the T cells will be naive. So the antigen presenting cell, it's like the sergeant of the boot camp, and the T cells are the trainees of the boot camp. And if there is no sergeant, which is the antigen presenting cells, then the T cells will be untrained and insufficient and not well armed to fight against cancer cells. So the macadamia nuts, they don't exactly activate T cells, but they remove the setbacks or any roadblocks or distractions that could distort the distortions that force the immune system into tolerance mode, or in other words, the M2 phenotype, because that phenotype tolerates and even supports cancer cells and tumors. Also, what supports M2 phenotype is high W6 nuts, copper-rich seeds, and polyphenol overloaded foods, because they mimic tissue damage. And what that does is that tissue damage will cause the recruitment of Tregs, and then the Tregs, they steal the IL-2 from the T cell. Cancer tumors, they also recruit Tregs, and then that weakens the T cells. Another issue with copper-rich seeds is that this could disrupt the lysosomal membrane peroxidation reversal, or to repair the membrane, but that's a whole another rabbit hole for a different video. Okay, so this next part is important because T cell fate or formation isn't decided by calories, it's decided by lipid-driven signaling noise. So macadamia nuts are dominated by oleic acid, also very low W6 linoleic acid. So as I said earlier at the start of the video, that high W6 foods or nuts would support an M2 phenotype state that supports tumors. So also macadamia nuts, minimal polyphenol danger mimics, and then low copper, low iron. Okay, now this relates to what I said earlier about copper and iron. So copper and iron, they drive reactive oxygen species. What that ends up doing is that will end up pushing or up-regulating Tregs, so that the Tregs steal the IL-2 from T cells. Also, high W6 also pushes Tregs to steal IL-2 from T cells. So W6 and copper-iron driven reactive oxygen species, those things, they also reduce effective antigen presentation. So that means that the drill sergeant, which is the antigen presenting cells, cannot train the T cells properly to fight the cancer invasion. Okay, so this next piece goes back to what I said at the start of the video, that macadamia nuts, they help remove the blockades, or macadamia nuts reduces or takes away the setbacks that hinders or stifles a T cell or immune cell activation or function. And macadamia nuts, they help immune cells and T cells not by actually activating them, but by reducing toll-like receptor 4 misactivation, because if that's chronic, the toll-like receptor 4, such as from lipopolysaccharides, from constant long-time gluten ingestion in many foods. Like if you look at the ingredients list, there's gluten in many foods. If gluten is at the top of the list, that means that there is a lot of gluten in the food product, or that most of the food product consists of gluten. So that will lead to chronic toll-like receptor 4 signaling on the APCs, which is another different rabbit hole for a different video. Therefore, if that happens, if that chronic signaling of the TLR4 because of the gluten happens, then that will reduce immune cell, let's say, visibility. It creates like a smoke screen. So there's so much inflammation that the immune cells and T cells, they really can't see, or they're even deactivated or antagonized because of the inflammation. Because that's pretty much what gluten does. It activates inflammation. So that will act as a setback or a blockade on immune cell and T cell function. But macadamia nuts, by reducing toll-like receptor 4 misactivation, that will reduce the chronic toll-like receptor 4 signaling on the APCs. Also, another major thing that macadamia nuts reduces is NF-κB. So that happens, let's say, for example, a CD27 on immune cell, and then the CD70 on the tumor cell. If that goes on for too long, that will eventually lead to the blockade or the setback that reduces immune cell or T cell regulation and function. And what that is exhausted T cells from ongoing NF-κB and then closing at chromatin. So chromatin is like at the DNA level. So inside the chromatin is the DNA itself. But the transcription factors and genes that interacts with the DNA or is supposed to enter into the chromatin, the gene transcription factors responsible for immune function and immune health, those genes and transcription factors for those immune benefits are actually disabled or shut off if the chromatin is closed. And that it's critical for the chromatin to be opened. So basically, macadamia nuts, they prevent or at least help the chromatin from shutting. And because if the chromatin is shut, then the gene transcription factors for the immune system won't work. So macadamia nuts protects or prevents against that by lowering NF-κB. Another majorly important thing that macadamia nuts do is that it fuels the mitochondria, so that the mitochondria can provide ATP for immune cells and T cells, because they demand a lot of ATP. Also, another important function of the mitochondria is that it's also needed to form the PSMAC. So I have other videos on PSMAC. You can check those out if you like. But the PSMAC formation requires a lot of ATP. And macadamia nuts, they also help IFN-γ. IFN-γ is something that helps support and stimulate immune system upregulation. But macadamia nuts, they don't stimulate IFN-γ, but they do remove the brakes or the setbacks or blockades that suppress IFN-γ. Okay, so quick recap: macadamia nuts, a very low W6, low copper, low iron, because copper and iron drives ROS, which drives Tregs. Toll-like receptor 4 signaling reduces effective antigen presentation, which is the sergeant of the boot camp, and the T cells are the boot camp. TLR4 is increased by chronic gluten ingestion. And macadamia nuts reduce NF-κB, which is one of the main and strongest suppressors or blockades that gets in the way of immune system function. So that's it for the video. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Keep it locked in here on this channel for more future videos, and I'll see you in the next video.